Welcome back, everyone. Today, I'm diving deep into a piece of gear that many of you have asked me to cover in detail, the Hasselblad XCD 20 to 35mm E-lens, paired with the Hasselblad X2D II. This review is going to be thorough. We'll walk through the specifications, handling, design, build quality, and performance, before moving into sample images to examine sharpness, color rendering, contrast, and versatility across the zoom range. By the end, you'll have all the information you need to decide if this wide-angle zoom lens belongs in your Hasselblad kit. Introduction to the lens. The lens we're looking at today is the XCD 20 to 35mm E, part of Hasselblad's exclusive lens lineup. The designation stands for exclusive, and at this moment there are only two lenses in the XCD family that carry that badge, this 20 to 35mm zoom, and the newer 35 to 100mm zoom. These two lenses complement each other perfectly. If you own both, you effectively cover the entire focal length range between 20mm and 100mm on the medium format sensor of the X2D system. That translates into a lot of flexibility without needing a large collection of primes. For this review, I mounted the 20 to 35mm on the Hasselblad X2D II, though everything I discuss here applies equally to the original X2D. The lens performs beautifully on both bodies, and the ergonomics are a perfect match. The size, weight, and proportions make it look and feel right at home. Build quality and design. Hasselblad has always been known for meticulous craftsmanship, and this lens is no exception. The build quality is outstanding, with solid all-metal body with a premium finish, consistent with the rest of the XCD lineup. It feels robust in the hand and has a reassuring weight without being cumbersome. At 805 grams without caps or hood, it strikes a balance hefty enough to feel substantial, but not so heavy that it becomes uncomfortable during long shoots. The zoom ring moves smoothly across its range, from 20mm to 35mm, with clearly marked intervals at 20, 24, 28, 32, and 35mm. These positions almost replicate having a set of 5 prime lenses in one barrel, since each focal length delivers distinct perspectives that can stand on their own. I'll show you sample images later to illustrate how well each focal length performs. Weather sealing is present in the design, with visible rubber gaskets around the mount, although Hasselblad doesn't publish an official weather resistance rating. In practice, the sealing inspires confidence for shooting in light rain or dusty environments, though the ultimate decision about risk rests with the photographer. Field of view and crop factor. Let's talk about field of view. On the 40 for 33mm medium format sensor used in the X2D series, the 20mm setting equates to roughly 16mm on a full-frame system, while 35mm on this lens corresponds to about 27mm in full-frame terms. The crop factor of 0.79 is what drives these equivalents. At 20mm, the diagonal angle of view is an impressive 108 degrees wider than the 90-degree threshold that makes a lens truly expansive. That makes this lens a fantastic choice for architecture, interiors, and landscapes, where capturing as much of the scene as possible matters. On the longer end, at 35mm full-frame equivalent of about 27mm, you're in the sweet spot for street photography, environmental portraits, and reportage. That makes this lens highly versatile across genres. Aperture and optical. The important detail. This is not a constant aperture zoom. At the wide end 20mm, the maximum aperture opens up to f/3.2. As you zoom to 35mm, the maximum aperture narrows to f/4.5. The transition is smooth, and the camera automatically adjusts so that you're always shooting at the widest aperture possible for the selected focal length. While some photographers prefer constant aperture designs, this compromise helps keep the lens compact and manageable. Inside, the lens has a sophisticated optical construction of 16 elements in 12 groups, including 3 aspherical elements and 4 extra low dispersion elements. This design minimizes chromatic aberrations, distortion, and other optical flaws, while maximizing sharpness, micro-contrast, and clarity. Focusing and hand length. Minimum focusing distance is 30 centimeters, measured from the sensor plane. This isn't a macro lens, as the maximum magnification is just 0.094 at the wide end and about 0.156 at 35mm. However, with Hasselblad's extension tubes, you can achieve higher magnification if close-up work is important to you. Autofocus is generally quick and accurate, even in lower light. It doesn't exhibit noticeable hunting, which is a plus for a wide-angle zoom. That said, there's one limitation worth noting. As of the current firmware, autofocus continuous AFC is not supported. The option is grayed out in the menu with a note that AFC is not supported by lens firmware version. This suggests that the hardware is capable, but Hasselblad hasn't yet enabled it in software. Whether a future firmware update will unlock this remains to be seen. For most applications, landscape, architecture, city scenes, and general travel photography, AFC is an essential. But for photographers who want to track subjects, like street or documentary shooters, its absence is something to be aware of. Sharpness and image quality. Now let's move to what really matters, image quality. I tested this lens extensively at all 5 marked focal lengths: 20, 24, 28, 32, and 35 millimeters. Across the board, sharpness is excellent. At 20 millimeters, images are crisp from center to edge, with no obvious fall-off in micro-contrast or detail. Even when zooming to 100% in post, fine textures remain well-defined, whether in foliage, architecture, or distant mountains. At 24 millimeters and 28 millimeters, sharpness is equally strong, with virtually no difference between the center and corners. This uniformity is particularly impressive for a wide-angle zoom. Many lenses struggle to maintain corner performance, but the XCD 20 to 35 millimeters handles it superbly. At 32 millimeters and 35 millimeters, performance remains consistent. Corners are as good as the center, and color rendering is vibrant yet natural, hallmarks of Hasselblad's optical and color science. At 35 millimeters, the field of view resembles that of the Leica Q3 at 28 millimeters, and the comparison is apt. Both deliver beautiful rendering with excellent detail. But here you also have the advantage of medium format depth and tonality. Bokeh and aperture performance. Though this is not a fast lens by portrait standards, you can still create pleasing background separation when shooting wide open, especially at closer focusing distances. At 20 millimeters f3.2, foreground subjects remain sharp while the background falls into a soft, dreamy blur. The transition is smooth, not busy or distracting. At 35 millimeters f4.5, depth of field is naturally deeper, but with careful subject placement and distance management, you can still achieve a sense of subject isolation. For creative applications, stopping down or opening up gives flexibility, though this lens shines more in wide-angle clarity than in shallow depth effects. Practical use and image stabilization. Thin body image stabilization IBIS of the X2D II makes this lens even more powerful. I was able to capture handheld exposures as slow as 1/5 of a second without noticeable blur, something nearly unthinkable on older medium format systems. This expands creative possibilities dramatically, whether you're shooting low-light interiors, twilight landscapes, or long exposure style images without a tripod. The lens also works beautifully for panoramas. Stitching multiple frames together yields massive files with incredible detail, over 230 megapixels in one of my stitch tests. Even when zoomed in 100%, the detail across the frame was breathtaking. Versatility and ideal application. So, who is this lens for? The answer is a wide variety of photographers. Landscape photographers will love the expansive field of view at 20 millimeters and the ability to capture grand scenes with minimal distortion. Architectural shooters benefit from the wide angle and corner-to-corner sharpness. Travel and street photographers will find 35 millimeters, 27 millimeters equivalent perfect for environmental storytelling. Reportage photographers can use the flexibility of zoom to adapt quickly in dynamic situations. Where it's less suitable is macro or high magnification close-up work, though extension tubes can help. And for sports or wildlife, the lack of continuous autofocus is a limitation. But within its intended range, the lens performs exceptionally well. Final thoughts to summarize: the Hasselblad XCD 20 to 35 millimeters lens is a remarkable addition to the XCD lineup and a perfect companion to the X2D II. It combines excellent build quality, versatile focal lengths, sharp and consistent image quality across the frame, and compatibility with Hasselblad's outstanding IBIS system. While it isn't the lightest lens in the world, it balances nicely with the X2D body and feels comfortable in extended use. The compromises are few: a variable aperture, modest close-focus magnification, and the current absence of autofocus continuous. But none of these significantly detract from what is overall an exceptional wide-angle zoom. If you're already invested in the Hasselblad system and looking for a flexible wide-angle lens that can cover everything from sweeping landscapes to intimate street scenes, the XCD 20 to 35mm deserves serious consideration. Paired with the X2D II, it delivers results that are sharp, detailed, and full of the rich tonality that Hasselblad is known for. For many photographers, this may well become a go-to lens, especially when combined with the complementary 35 to 100mm e-zoom. Together, they cover a huge range while maintaining the optical excellence that medium-format shooters demand. And that concludes this in-depth review. I hope it has given you all the information you need to evaluate whether the Hasselblad XCD 20 to 35mm E is the right lens for your work. Thanks for joining me. Stay inspired and keep creating.